Welcome back everybody to this new video. You are of course watching the Materwelon channel. I hope you're doing well, and today we are going to take a critical look at a recent podcast episode by H3H3 Productions where Ethan, Gila and a couple of days later also Trisha Paytas on the Frenemy spin-off podcast have made some very questionable statements about James Charles in regards to the recent grooming allegations. Ethan and Gila decided to call their videos covering the situation "James Charles is a predator" and "James Charles is a danger to society," which I consider to be somewhere between rather problematic and downright slanderish, given the context of this situation, so let's talk about it. For those of you that have been living under a rock or took a relaxing break off social media for the past week, over on Twitter, popular influencer James Charles has actually been accused of some very serious stuff. He has been called out by a 16-year-old fan for allegedly grooming him and sending explicit pictures of himself. This post sparked some controversy among many Twitter users, with a huge chunk of people going up against James Charles here, but also many fans and other creators jumping in defending James. And very shortly after this happened, James Charles himself did actually respond, which we will get into in great detail once we take a look at what H3H3 has to say about this situation. But before we look at Ethan's statements, it's first important to know the background of James Charles and H3H3 Productions, because a lot of previous encounters exist that can be interpreted as being very relevant to this controversy. So Ethan and Gila from H3H3 Productions and James Charles did actually clash before at the tail end of 2020, because James Charles did release a new collection of his merch, and this sparked some controversy because Ethan had publicly called James out, and he thought James' merch design did strongly resemble the color pattern of an earlier product from the H3H3 Productions clothing brand, which definitely caused some negative attention between both of these YouTubers. This is why Ethan and Gila have a clear bias against James Charles whenever James finds himself in some kind of hot water, which explains why Ethan acts so condescending in the clips I'm gonna show you guys today. But it does not excuse this behavior, because even though H3H3 has, in my opinion, produced some legendary content a couple of years back, the new switch up to him only focusing on podcasts definitely showcased a decrease in quality and effort being put into the content. Additionally, Ethan seemed to get more hostile and grumpy from time to time, and I don't think this is such an unpopular opinion to hold anymore nowadays. And although in a podcast everything is a lot more authentic and certain unwanted aspects cannot be cut out, you still need to be informed about whatever you're talking about, or at least be able to admit when you are wrong about something or have spread misleading information. But let's actually take a look at what Ethan and Gila said here.
Last week I came across someone on my Insta Explore page, saw he followed me and added him on Snapchat. First of all, already you fucked up.
Why did you do that?
You literally are doing this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Okay, let me clarify. I am in no way a James Charles supporter, stan, or anything along those lines at all. I could honestly not be more indifferent about his persona or his content, but I will say this: he is well within his rights as a content creator to add anyone he likes on Snapchat. Everyone may accept whoever they want on that platform, or on any other platform for that matter. You as a fellow creator should be aware of that. As a public figure on social media, you do of course have boundaries, especially if you are above the age of 18, and some of your fans and viewership might not be, but simply adding someone on Snapchat does certainly not overstep any line at all, even though there are general disagreements where the line is really drawn. Also, the whole "you're doing this all the time" part, yeah, you will notice this as a pattern here, with callbacks to previous instances of James Charles apparently grooming people without even clarifying what he's actually referencing. Take this as an example.
The thing is that these allegations already came about James. You would think he would learn a thing or two.
A bunch of times.
Yeah, a bunch of times.
Like, if this was the first time it happened to you, maybe I would understand, but this already happened.
Okay, so this is what I meant. They constantly talk about this like James Charles gets accused of shit like that on the weekly, and they truly believe that these past allegations have some weight behind them, when in reality, at the point of this recording 6 days ago, probably a couple more when you're watching this, the only past allegations they could be talking about are the ones Tati Westbrook brought up, and they have been proven to be completely false. So if you after 2 years still support Tati over James Charles and that particular drama, then I honestly don't know what what to tell you, man. And if that's not what you're talking about, then at least fucking state what you're referencing here. This is a meaningless blanket statement, nothing more.
You're the one that followed him, dipshit. So how are you going to accuse him of having an ulterior motive when you literally did the action of following him?
As a little bit of context for this allegation, the accuser did say they talked on Snapchat quite a bit before the conversation allegedly turned sexual, and James Charles was apparently the one who added this kid. But again, that does not prove in the slightest he had an ulterior motive from the start. The problem here is that the person who came forward claims that they have told James Charles that they are 16 years old, and James Charles claimed that this person lied about their age to him. So you have a clear contradiction here. However, the problem I see with this is that the victim here, unlike with the Levy situation, does provide evidence of semi-sexual snaps with James Charles, which would help his case. However, considering he screenshot every single snap he sent, I very highly doubt that a guy who saves everything James sends him would not save his literal nudes, the part that would undeniably prove him guilty. I mean, that would have been the ultimate trump card to canceling this guy. So I don't get at all why you wouldn't believe James here, or at the very least have some reasonable doubt about the quote-unquote victim's claims.
So right now he's admitting to exchanging nudes with a 16-year-old.
Oops.
Now, once again, it is not the 16-year-old.
Yes, he said flirting back. So.
No, he said lewds, sharing lewds, flirting back. The guy showed that he sent him those photos. So right away, he's admitting that he committed a crime.
How is it not this kid's responsibility to know his age? Of course he needs to fucking know his age and be truthful about it, especially in scenarios like this. I agree that James should have probably been more cautious, but it's definitely not entirely his fault. I mean, I get that H3H3 and James had some past disagreements, and you can have your own opinions on your podcast, obviously, but this is nearly slander in my eyes. Like, come on, how likely is it that James Charles, who was involved in the second biggest YouTube controversy of all time, only behind this guy, in which one of the key aspects have been him allegedly sexually advancing with guys he should have not approached, would sit here only 2 years after and willingly risk his career, not even for receiving nudes, but for sending nudes to a 16-year-old boy. Like, that would be the equivalent of Logan Paul tomorrow running into a graveyard and filming himself digging up dead bodies while wearing this fucking hat. Like, that would never happen, of course. There's a conversation to be held about victims who cannot achieve justice because there is simply a lack of evidence, but the accuser literally claims that James told him he, quote, approved of him being 16. And you're trying to tell me that the guy that took a screenshot of every picture from the start would not have saved something as incriminating as that? I find it way more convincing that this kid lied about his age in order to try and cancel James Charles for clout right off the bat. Because otherwise, why would he have recorded irrelevant details but not the main part? Also, lewd photos is not immediately equal to nudes, just saying.
I would never knowingly, you know, in the back of your mind, you're like, this guy might not. It's fucking bullshit. You're a piece of shit, bro. Stop giving this guy a pass. Fuck you.
Actually, not everybody has this mindset, regardless of whether you think James Charles is guilty here or not. I mean, there have been some new allegations coming forward on Twitter after all, but again, without any concrete evidence. They might be actual victims, but they could also just be clout chasers. I mean, if any of these were true, you would have a solid case on a dangerous pattern of behavior. But right now, you just have claim against claim, but you're treating James Charles like he's already 100% guilty. Sadly, the thing that in my opinion really shows how desperate and hostile Ethan has truly become, which additionally pushed me to even make this video, is that in his spin-off podcast, he recorded days after this happening, he still goes on to say this. And don't be thrown off by the clothing choices, by the way.
James Charles, for like the 1 billionth time, is being exposed for messaging underage boys on Snap. Now, how many times has this happened? I mean, people keep giving James Charles the slide.
The fact that he admitted to this Friday and this morning was just like, good morning, everyone. Like,
Oh, yeah.
As if like you didn't just like literally commit a crime. You literally can't send nudes to minors. Like that's crazy. And this is not the first time. So this means when there's a repeated pattern of behavior, it's no longer like I said this in my video, but I'll say it again. Like this, and I know this from a therapist point of view, right? Like if it happens once, you get called out, you know, you learn from your mistakes, you fuck up, you're like, fuck.
Dude.
But if it's a repeated pattern, this individual is an actual sick person.
He still can't help himself from sending inappropriate, sending nudes to children. And so he's a predator.
So many days later, you are still sitting here with Trisha fucking Paytas, out of all people, someone I try to avoid at all costs, and you still have not even slightly reconsidered your stance and position on this topic because of your sheer hatred and bias towards James Charles. I mean, Ethan really believes Trisha Paytas, who puts James Charles on the same level as the fucking Lopez brothers, who have already been proven guilty of grooming minors. Like, no, the Lopez brothers have clearly been way worse. If you're not familiar with that story already, make sure to watch Temaimai, I don't know how to correctly pronounce her name, but watch her video on the Lopez brothers if you need to be convinced that they are definitely worse than James Charles. As for H3H3, what past incidents of him sending nudes to minors are you talking about? How can you be sure that he sent nudes when all that was talked about were lewd photos, and how do you have the audacity to call him a danger for society in your video title and judge him as completely guilty when there's zero evidence to support that? This behavior and hatred boner is legitimately concerning in my opinion. Okay, so what's left to say here? In my eyes, of course, a spontaneous podcast can often lead to retrospectively bad takes, and Ethan will always have a bias against James Charles, but the fact that days after this initially came out, H3H3 is still sitting here claiming all that easily refutable shit, yeah, that really rubs me the wrong way here. In my opinion, this showcases a clear decline of Ethan Klein on YouTube, even though I'm by no means a James Charles fan at all. Anyway, that's gonna do it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a sub and a like. I greatly appreciate it. Definitely let me know your opinion about this topic down in the comments. And yeah, the Blaze response is up next.